Forget the bald eagle. You know what the national emblem of this country ought to be? A big bowl of macaroni and cheese. A big bowl, because everything in this country is king size.
Hi, this video is a continuation of a little series I have going on talking about the 7 deadly sins of society today, but minus the religious undertones. Instead, I have been talking about certain feelings, motivators, and trends that I have been seeing spread a lot of negative consequences lately. And today I wanted to talk about gluttony. I know this word has a lot of connotations towards it, and it's not really in use much today, and it's pretty much thought to be only centered on food when you think of that word. And I am going to talk about food a lot today, but I want to talk more generally about the whole idea of overconsumption. That's the real topic of today's video. So the definition is very much focused on food, overindulgence of food and drink, but also is a little bit more broad in the sense of overindulgence of wealth items. And in the past, food scarcity was obviously a much larger problem than it is today. It is still a problem in some areas, but has definitely improved historically. Food and drink were very much considered wealth items in the past, more than they are today, just because there were less items. Throughout history, we imagine people in higher classes eating more and being bigger. There's this stereotypical image of a big, fat, rich king with a table in front of him and the royal class filled with loads of food and drink. And the food is large and interesting and colorful. And poor people, on the other hand, are thought of as frail and skinny, and they ate bread and colorless broth. But now things have really changed. Weight is no longer an indicator of your class or societal status. If anything, it's actually swung, I think, a little in the other direction. Overconsumption of food and other products is now available to the masses, rich or poor, through low quality, cheap stuff. The new status symbol today is not just access to food, but access to special healthy food and to nutritionists and professional meal planners and grocery shoppers or private chefs if you really look high class. And if you're lower class today, your food is more processed, more packaged, and more unnatural. There is a correlation between poverty and obesity today that goes in both directions. If you're low income, you're more likely to be obese because you're probably relying on cheap, high calorie, but low in nutrient, easily accessible food that doesn't take long to make, like fast food or microwavable food. This is just another way that society basically punishes the poor for being poor, like a never-ending cycle. They're deprived of the foods that would allow them to live a more healthy lifestyle because they either don't have the money or the time to prepare those healthier foods that often do take more time to make. Stress often causes people to overeat. If you're working high stress jobs that don't pay well, multiple jobs, barely making it by, it's very easy for depression and anxiety to creep into your life. And when that happens, a lot of people turn to comfort food. And in the other direction, if you're obese, you may have a harder time climbing the corporate ladder or reaching really high paying jobs, just because there have been some studies that show people who are obese are less likely to be chosen in the interview process compared to thinner people. Discrimination in the workplace towards overweight people can very much affect someone's ability to grow financially, even though how they look and how much they weigh probably has nothing to do with whether or not they're able to perform these high-paying white-collar jobs that typically it doesn't matter what your weight is, and yet it still affects these people. No matter what chart or graph you look at, I'm going to show a few, we are eating more. We're consuming more calories, we're consuming more processed foods, the number of in-between meal snacks has gone up, and through a combination of all of this and other factors, obesity rates are at an all-time high, and they're only getting higher. Over half of Americans are overweight or obese. And since I'm focusing on overconsumption today, I am talking a lot about food right now, but of course I am aware that obesity is also connected to lack of exercise, which is another problem. But as a result, this has led to an increase in health problems, especially for Americans. And then it becomes a cycle. Once you become overweight and develop health problems, that often makes it harder for you to lose weight, and it just feeds on itself. So why are we eating and consuming so much? I've talked about this before, but younger generations in particular are really struggling with mental health issues, anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, loneliness. All of these things are leaving us with this emotional hole. That should probably be filled with meaningful friendships and relationships, a sense of community, proper medical care, exercise, hobbies that are mind enriching and not all sedentary, and a balanced outlook on health that allows for a treat once in a while so that you can still have fun in life. But who is teaching this to younger generations? It's not teachers, it's not in school. So your parents, it's really a toss-up if they are teaching that to you or if they even understand it themselves. They're probably more than likely just passing on their own bad habits to their kids. And it takes years to realize this, what you should be filling that emotional hole with. And by the time you do realize it, then it takes even more years to actually implement it and do it in your own life. And in the meantime, before we know this right way, we turn to what we know, and that's food that's bad for us and alcohol. Maybe I'm gonna come across preachy and like a sad, not fun having person when I talk about alcohol, and drinks. I am very much in the minority when it comes to all sorts of beverages. I don't drink coffee, I don't drink tea, I don't drink alcohol, and I don't drink soda. Consuming beverages is so deeply ingrained in our society that you don't even really realize it unless you don't partake and then you're hyper aware of it. I can't even imagine how annoying it would be if I was dating right now, like if someone asked me out for coffee or to go get drinks at a bar. Both of those things, like, I can partake in the activity, but without really consuming the beverage that is so attached to it. So many social activities are centered around drinks and food, but maybe even more drinks. But I'm not just saying that beverages are the problem on their own. I'm talking about overconsumption today. So too many beverages, and usually beverages that are not good for us. Half of Americans are drinking 3 to 5 cups of coffee every day. 5 cups in a day. I obviously cannot fathom that. I think that shows how, one, we love drinking beverages all day long and not for health or sustenance. It's just something to do, just something to consume. And 2, coffee is addictive. And no one seems to think that that's a problem. We all just chuckle and laugh it off like, oh, I can't function without my coffee. We're also drinking plenty of alcohol, on average about 6 drinks a week, so almost 1 every day. I have always been really bothered with the trivialization of drinking so much alcohol and how it's treated as a joke by like older millennials and Gen X, especially with the whole wine moms thing. It's become too big of a part of people's personalities, needing a drink, needing wine. And it's not a hobby either. They're not like interested in the history of wine or the wine making process. It's just drinking alcohol, and wine is chosen because it's seen as sophisticated, but you can be a wine alcoholic. It's sad that so many of these people feel they need their wine at the end of the day. They need it. Without it, they're not themselves. They're grumpy. I know that there's a line with alcohol consumption, and after the line it's dangerous, and before the line it can still be responsible. But that type of discourse isn't very fun, and people today don't really like talking about that. And people are, I think, often in denial of where that line is for themselves. So then it just turns into this cute, funny joke that women bond over, and I think in a lot of cases is masking a problem of alcohol dependency, especially for mothers who have lost a sense of themselves in life. But that is a whole entire other separate video that I could talk about for a long time. For younger generations, instead of wine moms, for Gen Z, it's beverage girlies.
I mean, what if I don't want to live the way you live?
Oh, don't be ridiculous, Andrea. Everybody wants this.
And I like that Gen Z is drinking less alcohol than generations of the past. I think that's cool. But the problem of beverage overconsumption is still alive and well, especially with beverage girlies and coffee. There's so many TikToks and social media posts of girls having their beverages, one for hydration, one for energy, and one just for fun, and showing their beverage collection, their cups collection, their mugs collection.
One to hydrate, one to energize, and one just for fun. A beverage goblin reads her beverages to make her brain run.
Sometimes the drinks are seemingly healthy, so it might feel like these beverages are not such a bad idea. I find it hard to believe that these fun, special beverages are along with the required amount of just water that you should be drinking in a day, rather than instead of the water that they should be drinking in a day. And I know the beverage girlies might come for me and say, what's the harm? And I guess I would rather someone be drinking an Olipop and an iced latte every day than 3 alcoholic beverages. But at the end of the day, it's still the same unnecessary overconsumption problem. And it adds up to a lot of money and a lot of drink containers going into landfills that didn't need to, and collections of Stanley cups that are larger than any one person would ever need. And that leads me to my next point. I understand that food is definitely a form of entertainment, and I agree. Cooking and eating and watching shows about cooking is definitely an American pastime. However, there is a new form of food-related content that is not focused on cooking or eating, just on wasting. And there's been some that I find funny and sad that are more talking about wasting than actually wasting, like all of the TikToks that point out how so many of us go to the grocery store and buy a bag of spinach each week only to throw it out and never use it, and then repeat the same process the next week, and we just perpetually are throwing out bags of spinach. I've definitely been there. But the other kinds that I'm talking about today is just showing food being wasted. That's it. That's the whole point of the video, is wasting food. And some of this content is very much rage bait, I think. Like people spreading out on their counter like a whole bottle of ketchup and a whole bottle of mustard and like a whole giant jug of mayonnaise and mixing it all together and then putting noodles on it and sliced bread and like just making it so disgusting that the point is to like anger the viewer because you know it's just gonna get immediately thrown away. And what was this video even for? I've actually seen a lot of videos of this type where people are like concocting these nasty food mixtures in the toilet. And It works. It makes me angry. This is for entertainment, I guess, just to flush food down the toilet. And these types of food wasting videos, I do think get a lot of negative backlash, and some creators have even been like canceled over it. But at the end of the day, those videos still get loads of views and loads of engagement, whether it's positive or negative, and they're still very popular, and I still see them. I kind of want to do a whole separate video about rage bait content. However, there is another much more sneaky type of overconsumption, food wasting content, and it frustrates me, and it's often presented under the guise of aesthetic content or ASMR. These are maybe even a bigger problem than the rage bait type of videos, because these kinds of videos are really the ones that will make the watcher feel the need to buy the stuff that is being shown in the video unnecessarily, which is probably not the case for like the food in the toilet type of videos. I get a lot of these ASMR satisfying types of things showing up in my feed because the Instagram algorithm knows that I like ASMR and I like aesthetic. I like looking at pretty things that look nice, like cottagecore or clean girl or dark academia. So what comes with this is people showing basically like their food organization, the inside of their fridge. And there's like 10 different types of ice cubes that they prepare every single week with all different shapes of ice cube makers, or a fridge just filled with so many clean plastic containers that the food is placed inside, the small individually wrapped snacks and the many types of beverages just all being loaded into the fridge, as if the inside of your fridge needs to be like this. Having this many types of ice cube containers and plastic containers is very much overconsumption. It's unnecessary. It's ridiculous. Like, why do we feel the need for every inch of our lives and corner of our fridges to be aesthetic? The other day I got a different type of video that I'll show of someone showing their real kitchen, and it's just a normal kitchen. It's not that dirty. It's mostly organized. It just looks normal, and I appreciated this person putting that type of content out there. I know that those perfect fridges with all the individually wrapped plastic loaded snacks look good, but I think we're influenced by people on social media having these things rather than truly wanting them ourselves and thinking this will make me happier or improve my life in some way. The amount of purpose and happiness that these usually plastic items bring into our lives does not outweigh the cost to our wallets, literally, and to the environment. Because at the end of the day, all of these things end up in the trash. The production of food and beverages and just things over time has shifted to a model that encourages overconsumption. I am practically too young to remember the days where you would buy something to last a lifetime. This is going way beyond just food items and into greater consumer goods, because back then food items at the grocery store were more likely to be local and less packaged, just because it wasn't as much of a global economy back then. The blenders and kitchen mixers of our parents' generation were well made and high quality, and the companies producing them did not intend on their customers buying many throughout their lives. But that's not as profitable, and they've since realized, of making lower quality items for pretty much the same price and shortening the replacement cycle. Planned obsolescence is something that is usually talked about in regards to tech items, but it can apply to all types of consumer goods like food packaging and fast fashion and smart chips in ink for printers. All of these things encourage a shorter lifespan in order to get people to overconsume more than they need when you could just make the item high quality to start with. And of course, a lot of this blame falls on the companies putting profitability over the better interests of the consumer. This is another example of how poor people are punished for their poorness by having to buy multiple pairs of shitty boots over the course of a period of time and end up spending more money than if they were to just be able to afford one pair of high quality boots that would last a lifetime. And there's a whole theory around this. So as always, there is only so much that we can do as individual consumers in this overconsumption problem. And when it comes to companies making unethical business decisions, we can certainly avoid supporting them when possible. But there has also been a greater cultural change that I don't think is solely to blame companies, where younger generations and even our parents' generation has just shifted towards immediately buying a new thing versus the many alternatives. When it comes to clothing, I do have some hope with Gen Z because thrifting has totally turned around into a cool, admirable, aspirational thing when it was not that long ago when buying clothes from the thrift store was something to make fun of. But overall, I see a lot of people, including myself, who just jump to buying something new right away. And that's certainly the easy way out, but I want to see a stronger emphasis on the other R's of reduce, reuse, recycle. And recycling is, great, but it should be a last resort. It's not the first choice that you should make. There's so many issues with the supply chain of recycling that so much of what you think gets recycled often does not. So instead of relying on recycling, what about refusing and repairing? The 7 R's actually begin with rethinking. Rethink is number 1. If nothing else, just pause and stop and think before you're acquiring or consuming new items. Do you need this? Is this really important for you? Is it a good choice? Mindless purchasing is what ultimately leads to overconsumption, whether it's food, drink, or other consumer goods. So I hope this video maybe made you think, and thanks for listening. Let me know which deadly sin I should talk about next.
These people are efficient, professional, compulsive consumers. It's their civic duty. Consumption. It's the new national pastime. Fuck baseball. It's consumption. The only true, lasting American value that's left, buying things.